self, but I only see a frozen screen for you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Still?
Uh-huh.
Except for you
Am,
just answered my question.
am I frozen or delayed for you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, I wonder what people are seeing. I don't need to see you animated, but certainly if anyone else is watching, they're going to want to see your full expression.
Well, I am not by my laptop, but let's
Do you
just
see yourself? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so maybe
it
it's just my
all
screen.
looks fine.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
So we were just in this technical journey, right? We're just like we've literally the whole passage to get to this point has been a lot of back and forth and figuring out how to go live. It wasn't that simple. So we've been working on it, right? And now we just like pushed the button. So this is sort of a spontaneous initiation.
Right? I feel like our technical issues are such a good metaphor for life. Right?
Right, right. So we have less time today because of that. And so we wanted to just speak a little bit about a little bit about who we are, a little bit about the transitions we're going through, but only in an I think in an effort to sort of highlight where we think our conversations are going to go, the topics that we're going to dive into going forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I just feel like it's such a like powerful time for both of us because of where we've been recently and where we are currently and where we both have a sense of where we're going.
Yes.
Um so yeah, do you want to share a little bit about
Sure. Yeah, you want me to start? I'll start. Um, so yeah, it's an intense time. Like I'm gonna be 50. You're also just a couple of years older than me. So I think like collectively as a human being, these times I think there's a lot of invitation in this time of life to really go through something where it's sort of like a coming to terms. With what's real, with what's important, with what matters. And collectively, it just feels like also we're in a big transition. And so I think the fact that there's these opportunities that are going on individually for us, it's like right in attunement with the global situation. And yeah, what matters in that, right, is that what we are experiencing is that the more that we talk about it, the more that we normalize and highlight and include it in our conversations, in our intimacy, in our engagement, the less potential it has to sort of crush us. So I live in Costa Rica. I've been in Costa Rica since 1998, essentially. I had a real spiritual crisis that I tracked to age 17 or so. I sort of went off the deep end and struggled deeply with addiction and sort of by the grace of goodness found myself on the shores of Costa Rica, was surrounded by some friends, and felt immediately the quality of healing that was available by just being around nature with not a lot of stimulation and long walks on the beach. So that began a spiritual journey for me that has been the center of my existence for 25 years. And so I'm going to speak to some of those experiences along the way. Back into school. I signed up for a lot of master classes and am, pursuing some higher degree education because of it. And it's been intense and scary. And 2 months ago, my husband passed away. He didn't succeed in his fight against cancer. We fought it pretty solidly together for a couple of years, and yeah, he was 53. And so I'm now a single mom. I'm a widow of a 15-year-old girl. And I have a lot of figuring out what is going forward for me, and a lot of accountability because it's up to me now. And because it's such an intense circumstance, like I refuse to fail. So a lot of really interesting content is coming up around how I have sort of slothed off responsibility in the past because of, frankly, privilege and perhaps entitlement, and how much I can recognize that our life really is up to us. Like there's just really no excuses and no one to blame in my current state of maturity, thank goodness. But that doesn't make it easier. That's just a big highlight back to me about what I excuse, what I complain about, how much laziness kind of wants to creep in and say woe is me. And I just don't have that option. I think gratefully to the sacred role of motherhood, right? If it wasn't for her, perhaps I wouldn't feel that determination. So I'd like to bring in some of those archetypes and roles, and I think mostly, and I'll finish with this, understanding what the spiritual journey is for in our human experience, because
Mm.
it's kind of really coming together for me now. I can recognize how, in many ways, the spiritual pursuits have taken me to a place where things aren't as difficult, and that's very balmy and feels good. And it's not the point of it. I mean, I think we're entering in energetically into a spiritual warrior phase collectively, and it's like how do we fight?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear some of the things that you're saying about, ownership and accountability, and you being out of a partnership for the first time in a long time, right? Um, and how I'm going through some very similar experiences. And one of the things you said that I want to highlight before I share the sort of transition time that I'm feeling is what you said about the collective and individual, and how no matter what the details are, it does really feel like we as a human species are in this time of transition, of determining what's important, letting go of what's not, and understanding at a deeper and deeper level how we have to allow what we want,
Mm,
allow for what we want to happen in our
mm,
experience, and the resistance and overwhelm that comes up when we are faced with that, as as we start to understand that more and more.
Yeah.
I knew this, but it's interesting to hear you say that, like when you went to Costa Rica, that's when your spiritual journey deepened, I guess, because that was also right around the same time in my life when I came to a fork in the road. um, and um, understood for the first time as an adult that my life was mine to create, that my
Mm.
experience was mine to own. And
Mhm.
at that point in my life, I had struggled for a decade. So in a similar trajectory with mental health stuff, and was faced with it in that moment, and really received the message on a cellular level that, like, if I wanted something to change inside of me, that I had to do it myself. That I was the one that I've been looking for and waiting for and hoping for and praying for.
Oof.
And right. And so since then, what was that, like 1998 ish? Um, I feel like my journey is continually revolved around learning to trust myself, learning to honor my experience, learning to listen
Mhm.
to the messages that I've been getting inside of me, learning to love myself and everything that I um, experience as part of the journey that we're all on, which is being here in this human life and understanding ourselves.
Yeah.
Similar to a sense of not being in a partnership, my trajectory brought me to a place in a 20-year marriage where I recognize that I'm gay, and 20-year marriage to a man, I should specify. um, and that whole coming out process, which is, in its what, seventh ish year.
Is it that
um,
many already?
well, I came out to Mike in January of 2019. So 6 years. And then there was a couple of years before that that it was all, brewing within me.
Mm.
Um, and that's relevant to right now because I am getting ready to be an empty nester,
Mm.
getting ready to have a sense of freedom that I haven't had for 25, 27 years of freedom from other be of having responsibility to others on a
Mhm.
daily basis.
Yeah.
And what I'm experiencing is the chaos of that recognition, that expansion, that probability that I could do anything I want, and also, holy shit, nobody needs me. I know we'll talk a lot about astrology in our conversations because we always do, but I've been feeling so much that I'm in the middle, right in the middle of this transition from my Cancer South node to my Capricorn North node. It's like the last bit of caregiving, mothering, nurturing to others is like being shaken off in some ways.
Mm. Well, I mean, I think that I also, yeah, like we both love astrology and human design, and there's so much relative information in that because they are these sort of blueprints. They can speak to like what we're bringing with us into this human experience, and so there's a lot of keys in there. But just to say that I feel like what you just said there, though, also is something we should spend some time on around how often individuals and perhaps as a it's a can be considered as something that we do as females typically, but regardless of that, it's still important to notice the identification of self through others
Mm,
and how that is a can be a crutch of identity. So,
mm,
that then it's natural to have a purpose and an identity, and it's even noble to be in service. And yet, if those things are done in the name of non self knowledge, of avoidance of self, it's going to provide a crisis. And so when people do go into empty nest, a lot of women who chose to stay home, which is another thing I'd like to talk about, like what a beautiful choice that is
mm,
to in an essential choice, I think, when it comes to raising our children, and that they have a home life, however it shows up, but that crisis is that's what that is on various levels and spectrums is, oh, I forgot that it matters to my soul that there's some self-awareness here. There's some pursuit of self-realization, self-actualization, and creation and expression of self, that
yeah.
that makes us more capable to be in relationship and not less capable because we're narcissistic or selfish as a result.
Mm,
um, so I really feel the when you're presencing it in that way, that you've spent 27 years in that role of hyper attuned to what the people in your life needed, because you're choosing relation, and how that's a very natural choice, an essential choice. And yet when we enter it without that knowledge that the self is a part of this and deserves to be cared for, nurtured, and, as you said, understood, often, yeah, we sort of rebel against those relationships
mm.
because part of us deeply intelligently knows something's missing, and I have a short amount of time, you
Yeah.
know it's limited, our time.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I've always understood on some level, and it just keeps deepening, that, our inner work, our individual experience is the most valuable thing to our relationships, and in fact, to our contribution to everything. Um, and what I see in myself and you and, everyone that I've ever worked with is that it's a process, and it rolls out as it rolls out.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
the timing is right. The the experience is exactly what it needs to be.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That
Yeah.
really is beautiful. That's like a deep trust in emergence, and that what you can see and what is here and what can be felt is exactly what's needed. It doesn't have to be the big picture, it doesn't have to be the final destination,
Mm,
and it doesn't even have to be a recollection. It's really, what's here right now, and trusting, deeply trusting that experience. That's so beautiful the way you said that.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of this project and how it came to be, and our vision for it, right? Is
Mhm.
just set aside time to presence and to hold space.
Yeah. And it is a practice. It takes it's interesting. I geek out, you know I do. I'm such a nerd on like this engineering of the self and the spiritual liberation process, the unlearning, the deconstruction. And so I always think of these hacks, like there's these hacks for longevity and hacks for nutrition and muscle building and these sorts of things. And what you just mentioned to me is one of those hacks.
Mm.
So say
Yeah.
again what you said.
Well, just that the catalyst for this project for us as individuals is that we recognize that when we take time to hold space
Yeah.
for presence, for what shows up in the moment to be processed, to be felt, seen, heard, brought to the light. That the healing that's possible in that moment is facilitated by our
Yeah.
allowing it to emerge.
Yeah.
It's so and we know how easy it is to get distracted,
Oh
to
yeah.
do all the other things, right? I've been on a journey of challenging myself not to do dishes
I think it's
because
hilarious that that's the one thing you picked.
well,
to
because
not to
I
not get distracted by
by
the dishes.
washing dishes. I mean, because it's so it's such a satisfying task in that you like the mess offends my senses. And the doing of the task resolves that offense. But as you mentioned earlier, like we will do anything often to neglect ourselves, to ignore, to resist the exposure that is
Yeah.
required to do the healing and growing we're here to do. We talked briefly before we went live about about movement because the last 2 days I've been doing more movement than I have in the last couple of weeks and feeling some things in my body that are new or shifted in a way that I'm like, what is this? What Um, and that it's that's what we're here for. We're here to feel, to have those experiences. There's no doubt that in my mind that we're here to have that discomfort, to have that resistance, and to work with it.
Yeah.
And that's part of
Yeah.
what
Yeah. Absolutely.
that's what part of a big part of what these conversations always do.
Well, and what we are practicing, right? So like when you talk about the dishes to me, like this is like, okay, this is a tool for being with what's uncomfortable. Like the dirtiness is uncomfortable, the messiness and the chaos is uncomfortable. It's symbolic. And culturally, at least in our experience as North Americans, we skip over what's uncomfortable. We try and fix what's uncomfortable. We are basically moving away from discomfort as often as possible.
Mm.
And the healing work is calling in, wait, like as you use the word allow, just or presencing or being with. allowing uncomfortability to exist in the field, in my awareness. And then there's spaciousness, and then we start to understand, what we want to tend to. And
Mm.
so, when you speak about the movement, that speaks to me more of priority, right? It's like, okay, the dishes are there, but the dishes don't really matter to me. But when I feel my body and I feel the tension in my body, I can be with that, right? Because I am now in my aware of not trying to pop a pill or that something's wrong and going into hyper productivity mentality. Instead, it's like, well, what's going on here? Some curiosity, some care. And then with that capacity to be there, you recognize this agency to do something about it. That, oh, tending to my body, having that relationship with my body allows movement to happen and allows relief. And you're empowered through your own capacity to self heal through just that relational experience of being with what's going on for you.
Mm.
And my teacher has really brought in, one of my teachers who is definitely my favorite right now, Thomas Hubel. That the intelligence in that, like, and that's the shift in orientation, where it's like, instead of God, the body and getting older and this is just how it is, that wait, there's something communicating to me here. There's a deep intelligence in me that is me,
Mm.
that I also can tend to and relate to and have an experience of healing.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that to end this initial brief conversation, we have an opportunity to presence what our biggest resistance, fear, like discomfort is for each of us right now, and what we hope to allow
Mm.
by presencing it together, right? By
Okay,
doing this good work.
you start.
Okay. There's no doubt for me that the thing that feels so um like such like an obstacle, like the thing that needs to be addressed, the thing that needs to be voiced and heard and expressed is is the fear.
So for me, I don't know if it's me or the
Okay.
whole, but just in case, I think you're back online.
Okay.
So start again.
Um, I'm just really feeling strongly that what's present for me right now as the resistance, the inner struggle, the fear-based conditioning that needs to be expressed and alchemized is around the unknown, is
Mm.
around the changes that are happening in my life and the call that I'm feeling to sort of blow it all up and do something that feels untethered is the word that I keep hearing.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
And there's this explosive quality to like a need for change, And then there's a little bit of fear also in that. What does that look like? And how am I going to pull that off? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's super easy for me to deflect with like logistics and planning and whatever, but underneath all of that is just a sense of, for me, like I'm getting ready to have no leash. And as you said, like there's a call, a draw to then expand my world in whatever, the how, I think, feels in some ways less important, or in some ways not less important, feels reductionist. It feels like when I try to figure out the how, it feels like I'm not letting myself confront the sheer terror of I can do whatever I want.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
Like the sheer terror that I'm experiencing when I think I I could do whatever I want. Like could I do whatever I want?
mhm, mhm,
And I know that that needs to be felt.
mm.
I know that I need to let myself extract all of the inner dialogue around that little buzz that's happening within
Mhm,
me.
mhm. Yeah, and also some intimacy with just terror, right? Because if terror is there, it's terror,
Yeah.
and the whatever is calling it from the outside is also secondary to harvesting. And that's just a really good example of what you're saying, what we're saying, what we're doing, because we want to let that terror speak. We want to give it room. We want to include it because it's intelligent and it's going to inform being able to be more whole in whatever decisions are to be made.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'll just capitalize on that by saying that, as part of this process of working with that right now in this transitional time in my life, I really hope to allow a sense of, um, a real sense of, I want to be precise in my language, a real sense of trust, of deep trust that these nudges and this calling that I'm experiencing that's scaring the shit out of me is not just, right for me, but really is the trajectory that's meant to play out in my individual life for the greater good.
Yeah. Yeah. Even just that your soul wants the experience, and that when it's satisfied, that'll also show itself, right? Like we really do deserve these adventures that our heart screams for. And that ability to trust that I'll be supported in that, and that it might look a little messy,
Yeah, yeah,
is the edge
it
in this
is.
case,
Yeah, it's
which is
absolutely
beautiful.
an edge.
Yeah.
All right, what's
Yeah.
coming up for
So,
you?
yeah, for me, I think like there's so many things that I would love to like be more overarched about, but I think that's also a capacity to philosophize and conceptualize. And when I'm really just like down to earth, um, I feel terror, but it's this sense of having to do this alone And when I say do this, I mean life, that I think I've been avoiding forever. And in my mature state, which is what you're sort of speaking to around like capacity and ripeness, like the fact that I can see that now is by the grace of the maturity. Because when I saw it as a young person, it was much more terrifying and led me to, do radical things to try and avoid and escape that fear that I carry, that I can't do it by myself.
Mm.
And it's not about hyper individualization or hyper vigilance or that at all. It Because we are a community, and we are, we do work together, and we do support each other, and we do need that. It's not that, it's a sense of sort of standing up for myself, standing up for my responsibilities. It's being organized, being efficient, and getting my needs met. I deflect so much on that. I create scenarios where I fail myself over and over again. And I have this sense of strength and clarity that's new, that's in not allowing the old excuses to come up that convinced me that if I just met the right person, if I just had more money, if I just had a like safe and secure whatever job, that then I would feel less afraid. And I know that's not true. I know that there is boots on the ground, hands in the soil, call to action. And it's so interesting. I mean, you know, if- none of us should have to suffer. And I don't want to uh, aggrandize suffering. But isn't it interesting that at 50 years old, despite all my efforts to be in relationship and hold careers and have a stable bank account, that I find myself with no excuses, but to not do it for myself. And I feel so deeply how, for me, that's a soul thing. Like it,
Mm.
and what's beautiful about bringing in the soul and understanding that we're responsible to that calling is that there's no pressure in it. It's not about succeeding or image management or even not failing. It's about literally standing on my own 2 feet and feeling what it feels like to accomplish something by my own actions, by my own determination and my own discipline. There's something deeply satisfying for me. That's the call that's coming through. It's not the same. It's not a stereotype. It's not a template, which is why these conversations and learning to presence and learning to investigate and stay curious of what's coming up, and the uncomfortable stuff is the stuff that has the information in it. To be willing to say I'm afraid, to be willing to say I feel like a 6-year-old girl alone in the mall and I've lost my mommy. We all know that feeling, most likely, or some version of it. And
Mm.
instead of running away from it or talking myself off the ledge of it, holding that space and saying, okay, I can see this terror and this fear. It's mine and it's universal. And it means something. It's speaking to me. It's intelligent, and it seeks to inform my growth, my healing, and my evolution.
Mm.
Yeah.
So good.
All right, so we've introduced some topics. We're going to talk about our shared history, our mom and dad relationships, our, the archetypes that have showed up in our lives too, right? How do you feel about that?
Yeah,
Do you agree?
we've got to do it.
And we're going to talk about, yeah, what it's like to be different, what it's like to not really fit into the status quo and what that can do to a person, the life of an artist, the life of a poet, the life of queerness and differentiation of, again, normal, what's considered normal, what's considered, um, yeah, kind of safe and controlled, the humans and what we've done to each other to sort of, in the name of safety, really control one another and some of the collective issues as well.
Yeah. Such
Awesome.
so like it's the mirroring and how all related just is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, I like what you said. I am what I've been waiting for. I am the blueprint and the map, and I have the keys, and I need to be willing to see myself,
Yeah.
and then we need to be willing to see each other.
Yeah, and it's true for all of us as individuals, and it's exactly what we need as humans. And I believe that's what the state of the world is funneling us towards, this sense of seeing what we are and the choices that we've made and having a bit of a reckoning about what we want for ourselves now and in the future and how to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and being real with our vulnerabilities and our struggles. The more we
Yes.
do that and share that, because we're all in the same boat in one way or another, the
Yeah.
more we are freed from it and the
Yeah.
more we can move on. The more we hide it, protect it, intellectualize it, and cover it up, the harder and faster we have to run, the faster we age, the more we stress.
So true.
That's why we're
So true.
making time for this.
Yeah, exactly. I just said to a client earlier this week that I said, these things are here to help you. And you can either let them help you or you can keep carrying them around.
Mm.
I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
You
right.
were talking to yourself too,
I
weren't
was
you?
so tired. I was like,
Of
oh, okay,
course. Of course.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so our goal is to do lives every Tuesday,
Yep.
and I think that's like 9:30 ish Eastern Standard Time. We're gonna try and do 45 minutes or so of just sort of continuous stream of updates and how it's going, and that discussion and reflection, right? And
Yep.
then these will also be posted for later, people who want to check it out later,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. For sure. Absolutely.
And feel free to share, subscribe, write us messages, let us know if you want to hit up a topic. We're happy to do it.
Yeah, and I think also on both of our websites, correct me if I'm wrong, there's ways to have individual conversations with us if
Yes,
that feels like something that anyone is called to do.
absolutely.
All
All
right.
right, Steph, have a good day. See you
You
soon.
too. Love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.